There are some scientific statements that arrive dressed like headlines, and some that arrive dressed like warnings. Betelgeuse may explode soon belongs to the second category. Now, in the careful language of astronomy, that sentence is perfectly reasonable. Betelgeuse really is an unstable red supergiant, the reddish shoulder of Orion, hanging there hundreds of light years away, living fast by stellar standards and heading, one day, toward a supernova. In 2019, it dimmed so dramatically that even sober astronomers had to stop and take a harder look. Later, observations pointed to a violent outburst and a cloud of cooling dust as the likely cause, not the immediate death of the star, but late at night, under the right light. That sentence stops sounding like astronomy, and it starts sounding like somebody somewhere has received really bad news. Because once you strip away the charts and papers and measurements, all of that cautious language, what do you really have? You have an ancient red star. It's misbehaving a little bit. And you have a giant in the heavens shedding itself. You have a distant sun that's growing stranger and moodier. It's kind of like going through a perimenopause phase. And if there were worlds circling in that far country of Orion, and I'm saying if, then somewhere under a red and restless sky, there might be minds looking upward with a very different feeling than our own, not with curiosity and wonder, but a sense of real urgency. Maybe for us, Betelgeuse is a beautiful object lesson in stellar evolution, but for someone else, it might be a time clock, a failing furnace, a notice posted on the sky. The old stories always begin this way, don't they? First, you have the priests that see it, and then the astronomers. The rulers, they pretend, not to worry, nothing to see here. And then engineers are called in quietly. And somewhere beneath that dying red light, the words begin to circulate. How long do we have? What can we carry? What can we take? Where do we go? Now the facts, before imagination gets too far away with us. Betelgeuse did dim. That part is absolutely true. NASA says the event was most likely caused by a surface outburst that led to dust formation, not an imminent supernova. NASA also thinks the star likely will not explode, not quite yet, and that when it finally does, Earth is far enough away that the event should be a spectacle to behold, not a catastrophe for us. But facts do not always close the door. Sometimes they leave it cracked open, just a bit. And through that crack comes the oldest thought in human mind. What if somebody lives up there? What if somebody's been watching that change in the star, not for months or years, but for generations? What if somewhere in that region, a civilization has already done the math, not movie monsters or conquerors, and not bug-eyed invaders with ray guns, something more thought-provoking than that. Refugees, a displaced species, the last caravans of a world that knows its sun cannot be trusted much longer. Vessels lifting into the darkness and archives being sealed, offspring asleep under blankets, while the adults, they just pretend that it's an ordinary journey. Coordinates are whispered from one doomed observatory to another, and out there in the long black sea between stars, you have a decision. Find water, air, and sun. Find a blue world. Find Earth. No, I'm not telling you this is really happening. I'm telling you only this. The universe is alive with violence on a scale that humbles the imagination, and even when science explains that mechanism, it does not remove the chill. Betelgeuse is real. Its instability is absolutely real. Its strange dimming was real. Its eventual death, just as our own sun, will eventually find its own demise. And somewhere between those facts and our oldest fears lives the kind of story that keeps people awake long after midnight hours. So tonight, Let us allow ourselves one little impossible thought. What if somewhere near the shoulder of Orion, the evacuation has already begun? What if the first travelers are already in the dark? And what if Earth, our little refuge circling an ordinary star, has appeared on somebody else's map as the nearest place to begin again? And this is where tonight begins. Welcome to the Daily Dozen. I hope you had a great weekend. This is Sunny, and tonight we move through 12 stories from science, culture, history, medicine, technology, and the steadily expanding category of things that makes a person stop and say, well, ain't that something? Let's begin. Betelgeuse is one of the best-known stars in the night sky, a massive red supergiant in Orion that has long been expected to end its life in a supernova. What causes confusion is the phrase soon. In human terms, soon suggests urgency, but in stellar terms, it suggests that something may happen on a timescale broad enough to comfortably outlive civilizations, empires, and probably several bad app redesigns. NASA's recent guidance says Betelgeuse likely won't explode quite yet, even though its behavior continues to fascinate astronomers. Still, it makes a wonderful opener because it tells us something important about scale. We are tiny creatures who like immediate answers. We like weather forecasts, package tracking, countdown clocks, and estimated arrival times. Astronomy gives us none of that. It gives us a star hundreds of light years away and says, in effect, yes, it is dying. And yes, it will be magnificent. No, I will not be taking follow-up questions on your schedule. And somehow, that is comforting because the sky remains gloriously unconcerned with our impatience. From the long, slow honesty of the cosmos to the very modern habit of asking a machine to tell us how to feel, how to heal, and how to navigate our darkest hours, and then being surprised when the machine turns out to be ethically underqualified. A new study tied to Brown University looked at something millions of people are already doing, whether policymakers are ready or not, treating large language models like therapists. The findings were not reassuring. Researchers identified 15 distinct ethical risks when chatbots were used in therapy-style roles, including mishandling crisis situations, reinforcing harmful beliefs, showing bias, and offering what the researchers called deceptive empathy, language that sounds caring without any actual understanding behind it. In other words, the machine can say, I hear you, it's not hearing you at all. That phrase, deceptive empathy, it really sticks with me. We know humans, right, that do that. They use it as a device, deceptive empathy. We've all experienced it because that may be one of the most modern dangers of AI. Not that it sounds cold, but that it sounds warm enough to be trusted. A clumsy machine is easy to dismiss. A fluent one is far more dangerous because it can imitate concern, structure, and therapeutic tone well enough to make people lower their guard. The Brown researchers were not saying AI has no role in mental health support. They were saying that when people use prompt tricks to turn a chatbot into a pretend counselor, they may be stepping into a space with real risk and almost no accountability. And that may be the deeper issue here. Human therapists can make mistakes too, but humans are licensed, they're supervised, they're trained, and they are answerable. A chatbot is not. It may be available at 2 a.m., but availability is not the same as care. How does something that really doesn't understand what it means to be alive tell you that it's important to value that life? That distinction matters. From deceptive empathy to something far more honest, a police patch featuring 3 West Virginia cryptids that sold out so quickly, it suggests at least one corner of America remains spiritually healthy. The Granville Police Department in West Virginia released a cryptid-themed patch featuring Mothman, the Flatwoods Monster, and the Grafton Monster, and the thing sold out in less than 24 hours. The patch wasn't just a joke. Proceeds were tied to the department's shop with a first responder program, which makes the whole thing even better. because it turns local folklore into community fundraising. And honestly, this is exactly how regional identity should work. Not every place gets Manhattan real estate or Los Angeles weather. Some places get supernatural winged men, an alien-looking flatwoods apparition, and a hulky cryptid from Grafton. You work with what you have, and West Virginia, to its credit, has long understood that its monsters are not a liability, they are a brand. There's also something economically smart here. People increasingly want things that feel local, specific, and a little bit weird. A cryptid patch checks every single box. It says, we know where we live, we know our mythology, and we are not above monetizing it for a good cause. That is not decline, that is adaptivity, folks. And frankly, I support it. From modern monster branding to ancient battlefield sarcasm. Because apparently the instinct to insult your enemies while attacking them is nothing new. It's just very, very old. Archaeologists working at Hippos, an ancient site in present-day Israel, found a 2,100-year-old lead sling bullet inscribed with the Greek word for learn, quote, unquote. Researchers interpreted it as a sarcastic taunt aimed at besieging forces. Essentially, learn your lesson. The artifact appears to be the first known sling bullet of its kind with that specific inscription. And I love this because it kind of shatters the false solemnness people often bring to the ancient world. We imagine antiquity as all marble profiles and tragic speeches. People, real people, live there. Irritated people, competitive people, people under siege who still had enough wit left within them to weaponize mockery. That is profoundly human. It also reveals something about warfare that has not changed much. Physical force is rarely enough. People want psychological advantage too. They want to hit you and let you know you've been outclassed. The delivery systems may have evolved, but the emotional instinct definitely has not. So yes, archaeology gives us dates, weights, inscriptions, and a battlefield context, but every so often, it also gives us a little time capsule of attitude. And attitude, it turns out, preserves beautifully in lead. From ancient projectiles to a format many people assumed had already died, except now it's back, spinning slowly, sounding warm, taking up shelf space, and making younger people do something truly radical. Listen to an album in order. Oh my gosh. Vinyl records keep coming back because they solve a problem streaming never intended to solve. Meaningful ownership. The RIAA says vinyl has now enjoyed nearly 2 decades of growth, and in 2025, U.S. vinyl sales surpassed 1 billion, continuing a long resurgence inside a music economy otherwise dominated by streaming. But economics alone do not explain the appeal. Vinyl is inconvenient, and that is part of its charm. You have to choose the record, remove it carefully, place it on the turntable, drop the needle, in case none of you know how to do this, sit with it, flip it. There is a ritual in it. A ritual is something digital life has mostly stripped away. Streaming is frictionless. Vinyl is deliberate. One treats music like water from a tap, and the other reminds you it was made by people, packaged by people, sold by people, and invited into your home as an object. And there's another layer. Fraud is a little harder with a physical object. Streams can be botted, manipulated, looped, padded, and gamed. A record is stubbornly honest. You bought it or you didn't. It exists or it doesn't. And for artists in an era of microscopic streaming payouts, physical sales still feel like one of the clearest ways fans can say, I mean it, we love you. Vinyl did not come back because it's efficient. It came back because it isn't. And since we're speaking of things that came back, let us go from a record spinning in the living room to a submarine hauled up from history, one containing an answer so eerie it took generations to understand it. When the Confederate submarine, the H.L. Hunley, was recovered, one of the most haunting details was not simply that the crew had died, it was how they were found, seated quietly at their stations, not clawing for hatches or clustered in panic, not obviously scrambling to survive. That image puzzled researchers for years, and then a 2017 PLOS-1 study offered a powerful explanation. The crew may have been killed almost instantly by the shockwave from their own 135-pound black powder torpedo, which had been mounted on a pole just 16 feet from the sub's bow. The problem may not have been that they failed to react. The problem may have been that they never had the chance. According to the study's scale modeling and blast analysis, the explosion that sank the USS Housatonic could also have sent a fatal pressure wave back through the Hunley's hull, killing the 8-man crew before they understood what was happening. Not every historian or stakeholder has accepted that as the final word, but it remains the most compelling scientific explanation for why the men were found at their posts. And that gives this story its terrible beauty. They made history and died in the same act, not in a scramble or in a cinematic last stand, but in one violent instant inside an iron shell, having just changed naval warfare forever. That is not just eerie. It is tragic in a very specific and unforgettable way. From an old machine that killed its own operators to a new one that certain executives seem eager to trust with more than it may actually deserve, because, once again, the future has arrived slightly before the humility. The CEO of NYC Health Plus Hospitals, Michael Katz, really did say that AI could replace a great deal of radiologists, if regulators allow it. That quote is real. The backlash was immediate. Radiologists pushed back hard, arguing that the statement badly oversimplified both the field and the technology. Having been in medicine most of my adult life, I absolutely agree with them. And they had reason to. There is already a documented radiology workforce shortage, and workforce research says AI may change the workflows dramatically, but it remains unclear whether it will truly replace physicians or mainly help them cope with growing demand and burnout. This is the part non-specialists often miss. Radiologists do not merely glance at a picture and nod knowingly. They interpret studies, weigh context, communicate findings, manage uncertainty. Some even do procedures. Some must be physically present. Some operate in emergencies, pediatric, breast, interventional, oncology settings where the work is much broader than image in, answer out. Even some people optimistic about AI and radiology describe it as a way to support a strange specialty rather than to erase it. And then there's the newest warning. Some multimodal AI system can sound convincingly competent even when they have not truly processed the image in the way users assume. So this is not simply a matter of faster reading or cheaper later. It is a matter of trust, workflow liability, and the difference between pattern assistance and clinical judgment. And it wasn't just that it's wrong. Hospitals would love cheaper interpretation for sure, and patients, they tend to prefer being accurately alive. And speaking of technology that sounds like it was pitched in a screenplay draft around 2 a.m., let us turn to the CIA. A desert, a downed airman, and a device that may be either a classified breakthrough or the scientific equivalent of someone making dramatic hand gestures in the dark. The public story goes like this. A secret CIA device called Ghost Murmur used long-range quantum magnetometry, an AI, to detect the heartbeat of a downed American airman hiding in southern Iran. Officials hinted at classified technology being important in the rescue. And the New York Post ran with a description so cinematic it practically arrived with its own soundtrack. The trouble is that physicists reading the story reacted with something very close to disbelief. Experts told Scientific American that detecting a single human heartbeat from vast distance in open terrain would clash with the known limits of magnetic sensing, because the heart's magnetic signal is astonishingly weak under controlled conditions. Now, quantum magnetometers are real. That's not the fake part. What is in question is the leap from real sensor science to the public claim being sold. Measuring tiny magnetic phenomena in laboratories is one thing. Sorting one heartbeat from the electromagnetic clutter of a desert at operational range is another. Scientists quoted in the debate have basically said that if ghost murmur works exactly as publicly described, it would not be a minor advance. It would be a revolutionary one, the kind of leap that tends not to sneak into existence through tabloid exposition. So what is most likely? My instinct is that some kind of classified ad may well have been used, but the public explanation sounds suspiciously like either a partial truth, a cover story, or some beautifully exaggerated spy mythology designed to keep the real method hidden, which, to be fair, is also a very intelligence agency thing to do. From secret technology and shaky physics to the visible glow of civilization itself. Because the planet is getting brighter at night, except, of course, where it isn't, and those differences tell us more than one global average ever could. A new analysis of VIIRS day-night band satellite data found that Earth's nights are getting brighter overall, about 2% per year, from 2014 to 2022. But the trend is far from uniform, so in places like China and India, rapid development and urban expansion are pushing light upward. In parts of Europe, brightness is actually falling, often because of energy-saving policies and efforts to reduce light pollution. In the Ukraine, night dimming has also reflected the brutal interruption of normal life through war. A darkening place is not automatically becoming more ecological. A brightening place is not automatically becoming healthier. One region dims because it has decided to turn off unnecessary lights. Another dims because infrastructure is damaged, people have fled, or war has pulled power from the grid. The same visual outcome, darkness, can mean conservation, collapse, or both. And that is one of the problems with global trend lines. They are useful, but they lie by smoothing out the human texture underneath them. One average can hide a dozen realities. Some places are glowing with growth, some are darkening by design, and some are going dark because life itself has been interrupted. The night sky, it turns out, is also a ledger. You just have to know how to read it. From orbital observations of humanity's changing glow to a much more local form of public entertainment, a British wildlife park still trying to answer one of civilization's less anticipated questions. Can a flock of polite parrots rehabilitate the bad ones? The saga of the Lincolnshire Wildlife Park parrots is real. The original 5, Billy, Elsa, Eric, Jade, and Tyson. They became famous after being housed together in 2020 and enthusiastically swearing at the visitors. Staff quickly realized the problem was social reinforcement. One bird would swear, another would react, and the whole thing became a kind of avian comedy circuit. By 2024, the park tried a new strategy, integrating the foul-mouthed parrots into a much larger flock in hopes that better behavior would dilute the bad language. Now, this story is funny because it reveals something deeply recognizable. The parrots are not being obscene because they are philosophically rebellious. They are doing it because human beings keep rewarding the behavior. African gray parrots are extraordinarily intelligent mimics. They repeat what gets attention, and nothing gets human attention faster than a small bird looking you in the eye and speaking like a dock worker with unresolved issues. So what do keepers do? Separate them? Well, they tried that. Reintegrate them into a more respectable crowd? Well, they tried that too. Hope the clean flock drowns out the bad examples? We are all in one way or another running that same experiment all the time. It is animal behavior. Yeah, but it's also social psychology with feathers. And from parrots who learned too much from people to a system that may know too little about the real world, because modern food security depends on software being willing to admit that the food in front of it exists. One of the strangest vulnerabilities in the modern food system is that food can be physically present and still become functionally inaccessible. The argument made in a recent analysis is not that the world lacks food in every such case, but that food now moves only when databases manifest. Platforms and digital approvals recognize it. If those systems fail, shipments can be delayed, rejected, or stranded even when warehouses are full and trucks are loaded. The food exists. The system just refuses to acknowledge it in a legally useful way. This is one of the great hidden frailties of modern efficiency. We have optimized away redundancy. We have replaced manual overrides with smooth software workflows. We have taught people to trust the scan, the release code, the logistics dashboard, and the authorization field. And in doing so, we've created a world in which a computer glitch can effectively tell reality to wait outside until it has a proper documentation. This is not science fiction. This is not a star exploding and a fictional alien species coming to Earth as refugees. This is management culture with a barcode scanner. And the really important point here is that food security is no longer just about production. It's about authorization. A society can have food and still create scarcity if its digital gatekeepers stop cooperating, which is why the right question is no longer, can the system run beautifully when everything works? It is, can the system still function when the software gets confused? That is a much harder question and a much more important one. And after all of that, if you are still here with me, the dying star, the fake therapist, the cryptid patch, which I still think is so cool, the sarcastic battlefield insult, the return of vinyl, the haunted stillness of the Hunley, the AI hospital fantasy, a spy gadget that may be a cover story, the changing glow of the planet, the foul-mouthed parrots, and the brittle food system, it feels right to end somewhere warm, somewhere older than trend, somewhere human beings have always gone when life gets loud. A systemic review led by researchers connected to Trinity College Dublin found that simply viewing visual art can support well-being, especially the kind associated with meaning, purpose, and personal growth. The review covered 38 studies and more than 6,800 participants, and the benefits appeared not only in museums and galleries, but also in hospitals and other everyday settings. This story warms my heart because it corrects a modern misunderstanding. We often defend art by talking about beauty, culture, or refinement as though the point of it is to make us seem improved in front of company. But the research suggests something simpler and deeper. Art may help people make sense of themselves. It may steady attention. It may provide meaning and give the mind something to organize itself around when life otherwise feels really noisy. That does not mean one quick glance at a painting cures sorrow by dinner. The researchers themselves were very careful. This is an evidence synthesis, not a magic trick. And they noted the field still needs stronger, more consistent methods, but the larger point stands, art is not merely decorative. It is participatory. Even when we are only looking, it invites interpretation and reflection, memory, association, and inner movement. And perhaps that is why people keep returning to it. Not because a painting solves the world's problems, but because sometimes it gives a person just enough stillness and just enough recognition, enough meaning to keep walking through it. And that is not luxury. That is medicine of a beautiful kind. And that's where we leave it tonight. This has been the Daily Dozen with Sunny from Nite Muse Media. Follow the signals, question the noise, and I'll see you on the night side.